Hi, I'm really excited to introduce you to Kate McAllister from the Hive. I was so fortunate to interview her on her birthday, and we talked about her incredible journey on how she became a teacher, an educator, an author, a world schooler, and now she is the proud founder of an amazing new model, I would say, on the cusp of innovation, creativity, and just models for how kids can learn these days in a community. She's calling the Hive, which is a really cool metaphor, right up my alley. I'm sure you are going to enjoy watching and hearing Kate's stories, her experience, her influences, and really what she's witnessing in kids and families who are participating in her new amazing model in the Dominican Republic. So I'll let you listen to the conversation, and I'd love to hear your comments, questions below. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Hello, I'm Kate McAllister, and I am the director of the Hive in the Dominican Republic. So I made a long, slow journey. I'm now in Dominican Republic, and I've been here for about a year and a half.
Right.
And I started teaching in 2001. And I had come from a very traditional educational background. My parents are very traditional. I went to the local comprehensive school. I didn't do particularly well at school myself. I went off into the world. I lived abroad. And I became a teacher when I became a mother.
Okay.
Because I thought it would be a very sensible career choice. I would be able to work and spend the holiday, like lots of mothers, I think, decide they want to become teachers because it's a pragmatic thing to do. And as soon as I started teaching, I found a feeling that I'd never had before. It was a feeling like I'd come home, I'd found something that I enjoyed and that I wasn't too shabby at either.
Right.
And I started life as a languages teacher. I taught French, so a very traditional subject in a very traditional way, having come from a very traditional background.
Right.
And I very quickly noticed that there were children in my classes who seemed to be able to access what I was trying to teach them and to learn and to make progress. And there were others who struggled for myriad reasons. And it didn't seem to have anything about how to do with how bright they were or how hard they were trying. There were other elements at play. And so that's where I really started my fascination with how learning works. How does it happen? Because it doesn't happen for everybody in the same way. And there are things that some children are able to do that other children are not able to do. And they've been learned somewhere at some point, somehow.
Somewhere
and I wanted
there.
to know
Yeah.
I wanted to know how, because it's not visible. You can't see it.
Right.
So unless you really go looking for it, what are they actually doing under the hood?
Right.
What's helping them to learn? What is it about their mental state and their emotional state that's allowing them to access learning and be successful? And what is it about some children that's making it almost impossible for them to move forward in their learning? So I very slowly moved into the world of special educational needs. I moved into the world of skills development, entrepreneurial education, the kind of, in the early 2000s, it was teaching the whole child, a holistic model of education. And I moved away from being a languages teacher and into developing something that we later called learning skills.
Okay.
And it was looking at those invisible processes of learning. What is it, and can it be taught explicitly?
Right.
Can you teach children how to focus? Can you teach children how to memorize? Can you teach children how to look at what they're doing and think about their thinking and notice patterns for themselves? Where do they get stuck? Where does it feel like the wheels are greased in their life? Like, who are they as learners?
Yeah.
Rather than just who are they as personalities and, oh, I'm just someone who's no good at learning. Nope. You can learn to be good at learning.
Labels come up. Their labels come up very early. Yeah.
They come up really early. They come up at, they start at sort of 4 or 5 years old when they notice that there are differences and there
Right.
are children on the red table and children on the purple table can't. And it starts. And then by the time they reach me when they're 11, that belief that they were no good at learning was in, and it was in almost concreted in. So we had a lot of undoing that needed to be done, kind of emotionally and mindset wise. And then we had lots of building to do. Like, these are skills. And once you've learned the skills, you can choose where you want to apply them.
Right.
And so that was my work for about 5 to 10 years. And
still in
so
England.
Still in England.
Okay.
In England, in a perfectly standard secondary school in the south of England. And I've written a book about it with my colleague, Dr. James Mannion. We worked together on this for years, and he did a PhD on it. Thank goodness, because I'm not
PhD. Just so we know.
It's called Fear is the Mind Killer.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's all about what we did and how it worked, and how so much of it comes down to fear. So much of what stops us from moving forward in life comes down to fear. And so after we'd done all this work, I was like, I've got the solution to education. I'm going to leave my job in the classroom. I'm too restricted here. I'm going to take this out into the world. And we took it out into the world. We started working with a few schools as education consultants. And in that space at that time was what was called the refugee crisis in Europe. And so I had a little bit of extra time on my hands, and I thought, I'll go and see what I can do to be helpful. And I kind of got drawn into the world of refugee education, which lasted 5 or 6 years, because everything that came from that model of this kind of human-centered approach to learning, understanding who people are and how they're feeling physiologically. Like, are they hungry? Are they cold? Are they tired? Are they scared? How they feel about themselves as learners. Are they ready? Are they open? Are they willing? Was relevant to people who were really, really going through one of the worst experiences in life. And so that's where I met Darren, who I was working with in the UK, and he's a trauma therapist. So that's where all of these practices that I was doing instinctively, that I later came to understand would now come from a trauma-informed place. So I knew instinctively what I needed to do, but I didn't have the research underpinning it. So now I do. And so we developed this whole model for education for really vulnerable people. And we had a school in a bus, and we had a school in an inflatable classroom.
In England, again, still? England?
No, in France and Italy and Greece.
Wow.
So we were in France and Italy and Greece.
Wow.
So we went to the refugee camps in France and Italy and Greece, and we trained volunteers, and we built little schoolhouses in really strange, interesting, innovative ways.
So you trained them based on your process that you developed over your time in England, your work, and then moving to refugee focused, sort of trauma-based education. You sort of pulled these threads, created a process.
So it's developed into a framework with 6 parts that follows the self-regulation cycle of a human being. So, and it's kind of, I call it like the sandwich of safety. So we have, in our education model, we just throw kids in to learning, and we spin them as fast as we can. And if they're not ready and able to go into that cycle, then they either bounce off of it, or they just get stuck spinning and can't get out, and they don't integrate any of their learning. It almost just flies out of them again after. So we've developed this framework which goes in a natural cycle, which focuses on being ready to learn and having all of your sort of bandwidth available to you for learning.
So creating a fertile sort of landscape inside first before you start throwing in the learning. Brilliant. Okay.
Yes. So when I first started, I thought it was about the environment for learning. So how could I make my classroom feel safe?
Okay, physical environment.
Physical environment. How could I behave as an educator to make my children feel safe to be with me? I understood on a kind of fundamental intuitive level that they needed to feel safe with me, because learning makes you feel vulnerable.
Right.
Being bad at something new.
You're not going to be good enough. Yeah.
A lot of it was about an internal sense of safety. So even if objectively you're safe,
right,
if you don't feel safe internally, if your nervous system is telling you there's a threat, you still don't have all of your prefrontal cortex available to you. And that's what you need for learning. We've turned it into this whole approach to learning, which creates a safe and physical environment. It trains all of the educators to be co-regulators, and it teaches children how to self-regulate. So now everybody's focusing on being ready to learn, making sure that the experiences we have while we're learning, we reflect upon and we seal them in and we integrate them into who we are so that we can carry them forward. So everything follows this cycle, and eventually it just becomes like a sine wave. You can tolerate really quite difficult challenges that are high energy up here or very low energy down here. So you could go rock climbing in the Himalayas and then do a Vipassana retreat and handle it internally. What we'd like is for people to be able to live rich lives, whatever that means to them, to be able to say yes to opportunities that come up because they know how to handle themselves when a challenge comes. I like experiential learning, so I wanted to learn from the people who are living this way. And what's really fascinating for me is that we've all kind of come up with a solution to the education system which we all feel isn't fit for purpose anymore. It's not doing what it needs to do.
Right.
And we've all designed something that's kind of pick and mix and collaborative. Yeah. And everybody's happy to share and work together. And it's just amazing and lovely. So I wanted to go meet all of these people. So I sold my house so that I could do that. And I planned to go and travel for a year or two and then write a book about what I had found and maybe put my daughter into a world school somewhere.
Right.
And then COVID was 2 weeks behind me. So when I went to Dominican Republic, we went into lockdown.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a lovely place to be stuck. So we decided not to try and race away. We started with 11 children. So the children of the people who literally lived within a stone's throw of where I lived. Right. So we were all stuck in the pandemic, all in lockdown, all with children around our ankles saying, what are we going to do with them all day?
Right.
So we decided to create a little bubble between our families. And as they were talking about it, I was thinking to myself, don't say anything, Kate. Don't tell them you open schools in strange places. You're supposed to be here on holiday. This isn't about opening schools. I couldn't help myself. So we started like that. And after a few weeks, it was obvious that everybody was enjoying it. And they said, can we do it for another 6 weeks? So I said, oh, yeah, okay, why not? And I had training because when I was doing the refugee education, we trained 600 volunteers live and 8,000 volunteers online. We created a MOOC that won an award with Cambridge University to train educators to go out in the world and work with refugees. So I had all these training materials that already existed.
Right.
So I trained some volunteers to join us.
Yeah.
And then it just grew. And
evolved.
Then it evolved. And it's called the Hive.
Yeah.
So everything about
the Hive. What is it that's significant about that represents the model you're building out?
So the curriculum model, the way we organize learning is more like a patchwork than a ladder or a honeycomb.
Yeah.
And you build it one cell at a time in the same way that bees build a honeycomb.
Right.
And the more bees there are, the bigger the hive becomes. So you start with one cell and it grows. And so that's how our whole methodology works. We started with one tiny little cell and 11 children, and we added more educators, and we added more children, and then we added a new building, and then we added more training, and it's growing. They contribute, so they bring in their skills, knowledge, passions,
right.
and they leave something behind, and then they go and they take the ideas and they drop them into their next context. So it's just a kind of a natural and organic way for the ideas to spread. So they come in. So we've got 3 main intakes. We've got local Dominican children who
right.
are on scholarships.
Yeah.
Then we've got an international cohort. So my daughter, other people who've come here for work but live here full time.
Right.
And so their children, some of whom are Dominican, some are American, European, Asian, they're from all over.
Right.
And they pay fees. And then we have world schooling families who come for 6 weeks at a time.
Okay. And age range, you have, what age to what age right now?
3 years old. Our youngest are 3 years old, and our eldest has been 16 so far.
Very cool. And so what are you witnessing with the children and families that are at the Hive? What kind of feedback, or what are they telling you that is different and remarkable?
So I think for me, the loveliest thing is the community. So people choose the Hive for their children. So yeah. They are either because it's one of the only places on the planet where they can run around together in nature.
Right.
At the moment.
Yeah.
But what they're finding is that the Hive weaves its magic on them too. The parents are finding psychological safety.
Yeah.
And they are doing work on themselves, and they feel more connected, and they are co-regulating for one another. And so you kind of have this lovely snowball effect of healing and opening up and
on a whole family, like a family, instead of school being segregated to just go learn, come back, and then we're a family. There's learning and growing happening, that they can speak sort of the same integrated language.
Wow. And parents come in and volunteer sometimes, or just spend time hanging out. We have clubs in the evening, so it's kind of it feeds. You can spend as much time or as little time there as you want. Some parents come and say, well, I'm ever so worried my child's not reading anymore. They're not doing as much reading as they were doing when they first arrived. And I go, I know, but they're doing an awful lot more talking, and they're doing an awful lot more reading online, and they're doing an awful lot more figuring out and critical thinking. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, the parents will come back and say, I can't believe how much my child has changed. They're so much more brave. They're so much more thoughtful. They're so much more kind of grounded,
self-aware,
and more themselves. Just and it's lovely, and I can see all of that, and now I get it. I always have to go through that bit where parents are nervous.
Can I ask you a question
of the method?
Around that, because I notice, having been in self-directed environments with other families and parents, there's, for many parents, many of us, we have our own unlearning and our own unconditioning. We've got to decondition what learning and education looks like. And even with my exposure to all sorts of models, I find myself sometimes falling into the trap of, okay, I'd like to blow the lid off and for them to world school and learn different models and change the pace and be more resilient. And I also want to make sure that they have all the opportunities. And am I screwing them up by not putting them through the system? And this is a question I get from many parents saying, that's great, Hope, that's fun for a year, but then beyond that, they've got to get their GCSEs, or they've got to get their SATs, or they have to have their equivalencies. So you, in case they want to be a doctor or a lawyer, you're not closing those opportunities. So how do you deal with questions like that, or concerns or fears from parents?
One at a time at the moment, because every parent is on an individual journey. And so I've just read a fantastic book by a lady called Naomi Fisher.
Okay.
And it's called Changing Our Minds. And I would love for every parent who's thinking about this kind of life to read it, because she's a child psychologist, clinical psychologist, and she knows what she's talking about, and she unschools her own children. And there's a whole section in her book about, that's why it's called Changing Our Minds, that we have to decondition ourselves from all of our belief system that's wrapped up.
Right.
And that's part of the work that I want to do, is putting together information for parents to make it feel less frightening. The fear that holds us back. If I had known 20 years ago what this life was like, I would have leapt through the looking glass then. I didn't know. I didn't know that there was this alternative, it feels like an alternative universe where adults collaborate and children collaborate, and they learn anyway, and they become more themselves.
Yes.
And it's everything that I quietly dreamed. I wish the world could be more like that, but it isn't. It's hard, and it's structured, and it doesn't quite fit, and I'll just have to get used to it. And it isn't. There is this other world out there, and it's not far away. It's in your world. And a lot of it comes from an attitude. A lot of it comes from being brave. You have to be brave. It doesn't hold you back. It doesn't prevent you from becoming a doctor or a lawyer or a journalist or any of the jobs that you want to do. How do we show people how they can begin to go on this journey without the fear holding them back, without it becoming unbearable? Because there's
it's a real part of it. Parents' fear is a massive part of what they're able to embark in terms of being brave and testing out new models for their children.
And you have to feel safe in order to be brave.
Yes.
Right? You can't, you know you're scared, but you do it anyway. That's courage.
Yeah.
Knowledge is really helpful for people to feel less scared. You still got to do the brave thing, right? You've still got to take your children out of the safety of the system.
Yes.
And put them in the alternative. But the more you know about where that can lead,
yes,
the more bearable that feeling is.
Let us know, what are the steps that we can take as parents, as families, to come and check out what you're doing? What are our options?
So you can join a session for 6 weeks. Okay. So you go to the website, have a look at the sessions that are coming up, and choose to join.
I'll put all the links in my description. Yeah.
And then there are other groups who are coming for 1 week or 2 weeks. So in between each session, we're making mini bespoke sessions for groups. So you can choose a sustainable development goal topic. Ocean Heroes is a popular one. And you can come and you kind of have the hive to yourself, or maybe there will be 2 or 3 groups doing the same thing for a week. And you just do like a taster version of the whole session. So for people who want to try it on but can't do 6 weeks, there will be opportunities to do that. Parents come for 1 session and then stay for 3 because 1 isn't enough, and then they because they have this kind of time and space opening up around them while they're here. They are managing to organize their lives in a way which enables them to stay longer.
When you wake up in the morning and you open your eyes and you're so thrilled with the situation that you've created very purposefully, what is it that sticks with you as the most exciting part of your work?
I think for me, the most exciting part is that it works even more than I hoped it would. So the feedback that I'm getting is, yes, my children are more independent and they're more wholehearted and they feel more brave and able to be themselves. And I'm like, yes, good, that's what I wanted it to do. And they feel like they have a voice, and they feel listened to for the first time in their lives. And they understand that they really can change the world. They are empowered. And so am I as a parent. I feel more connected to my children, and I feel more connected to nature. And so
you're so lit up when you say those
just
things.
how it is now, and it's not perfect, right? Like I don't have enough chairs yet, and there's 2 windows missing, and it's not perfect. It's new, it's growing, right? We're building it. Our whole philosophy is with, not for. So we will work with you, but we won't do it for you. And that's the children, that's the parents, that's everything. So that's the same for me, right? It's not finished. And so everyone who comes is helping, and they're doing something with me too. How will it feel when it's grounded and rooted and it really starts to bear fruit? So yeah. So we're going to start running trainings for people who want to come, spend a couple of days at the Hive, learn a little piece of the patchwork model, one little cell that they can take back and put into their context and begin to build from.
You are a light and a beacon, and you're so fired up. I can feel it here in Canada.
It's 2 days till the end of term. So if you'd caught me 2 weeks ago, I'd had enough. I was tired and I'd lost my sense of humor. But we've got our celebration day in 2 days. And so the children are coming together, and everybody will come in and they'll show what they've learned to the whole community. And this time they're teaching. So they're all teaching a little masterclass on something that they've learned. So I'm really excited to see it.
Well, you look sparkly, and I'm also keen to connect you with other educators around the world. You may know them all, but you may not. So if I can keep connecting the dots, because as you know, I am beekeeper, that's my metaphor. So I'm just trying to make sure
perfect.
that
perfect. That's what I need.
We're connecting. Big love.
Thank you.